and bear witness to my vow. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards from the realm of men. I pledge my life and honour to the Night's Watch for this night and all the nights to come.
You Nelters boys, rise now as men of the Night's Watch.
Hello and welcome to House Read. As you could probably tell from my introduction, lately I've been thinking a lot about the Watch. Specifically, about what will happen to the Watch after this.
Oi! For the Watch.
So Jon Snow is dead. Kit Harington has said he's not going to be coming back for the next series, so let's assume for the moment that he's telling the truth on that. This leaves something of a power vacuum up at the wall, and given the nature of how Jon Snow took over the Night Watch, this may prove something of a problem for the organisation.
Does anyone wish to speak for candidates before we cast our tokens for the 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch?
Sir Alistair Thorne is not just a knight, he's a man of true nobility. He was acting commander when the wall came under attack and led us to victory against the wildlings. He's a veteran of 100 battles and has been a defender of the Watch and the wall almost all of his life. He's the only true choice.
Yes.
Sir Dennis Mallister joined the Watch as a boy and has served loyally longer than any other ranger. Through 10 winters he served. As commander of the Shadow Tower, he kept the wildlings away. We could do no better.
If there is no one else, we will begin the voting. The triangular tokens count for Sir Alistair Thorne. The square tokens for Sir Dennis Mallister. Each
Mr. Raymond.
Samuel Tarley, go on.
Sam the Slayer. Another wildling lover, just like his friend Jon Snow. How's your lady love, Slayer?
Her name is Gilly. Brother Slint knows her quite well. They cowered together in the larder during the battle for the wall.
Lies!
A wildling girl, a baby, and Lord Janus. I found him there after the battle was over, in a puddle of his own making. Whilst Lord Janus was hiding with the women and children, Jon Snow was leading. Sir Alistair fought bravely, it is true. And when he was wounded, it was Jon who saved us. He took charge of the wall's defence. He killed the Magna of the Thanes. He went north to deal with Mance Rayder, knowing it almost certainly meant his own death. Before that, he led the mission to avenge Lord Commander Mormont. Mormont himself chose Jon to be his steward. He saw something in Jon, and now we've all seen it too. He may be young, but he's the commander we turned to when the night was darkest.
I can't argue with any of that. But who does Jon Snow want to command? Night's Watch or the wildlings? Everyone knows he loved a wildling girl and spoke with Mance Rayder many times. What would have happened in that tent between those two old friends if Stannis' army hadn't come along? We all saw him put the king beyond the wall out of his misery. Do you want to choose a man who has fought the wildlings all his life? Or a man who makes love to them?
It is time.
Appears to be a tie, Master.
You can hear from that clip there was essentially two main candidates in that election. One of them was Jon Snow, and the other one was Sir Alliser, and it was an incredibly close race. This demonstrates that essentially there are two factions at the Wall. The faction that supports Sir Alliser, who is against the wildlings, and the faction that supported Jon Snow. The problem is, however, is that now Jon Snow is dead and killed by Alliser, it's very unlikely that the Jon Snow faction would ever support Alliser becoming Lord Commander. It's also very unlikely that the people in the Alliser faction will be happy with someone from the Jon Snow faction taking over. And the third candidate in the election is just not popular enough to take over. So I think it's likely that the next Lord Commander of the Night's Watch will be someone from outside of the Night's Watch, who in a sense occupies a neutral position on this issue. In addition to this, I think there's 7 criteria that the next Lord Commander must meet. 1, I think it must be someone we know. It's very unlikely at this stage that it'll bring out an undeveloped character and promote them to a position of extreme power, just in the way that that's generally not how people write. 2, it has to be someone who is at the Wall currently. 3, it has to be someone who is on an upward trajectory. This means that their character arc is one where they started from lowly beginnings, probably, and have slowly risen through the ranks of society in terms of status. 4, it has to be somebody who is both capable and competent. 5, it has to be someone who can interact with the criminals and cutthroats that make up the largest proportion of the Night's Watch, but also someone who is honourable. 6, it has to be someone who cares about the state of Westeros and cares enough to do something about it at risk of their own life. And 7, it has to be someone with a plan for what the Night's Watch should do next. I think there is only one person who fits all of these criteria, and that person is Davos Seaworth. Take a listen to the character's biography and see if you think that he fits these 7 points.
In King's Landing, if you leave the Red Keep and aren't careful, you may find yourself in Flea Bottom. In such a cesspool did House Seaworth have its glorious start. I got out as soon as I could, finding work on a smuggler's ship. Soon, every port on the narrow sea had a bounty on me, which they would collect if I didn't pay a percentage to the right people or pick the right tides. You know how to tell a good smuggler? When you talk to one, there's a head that talks back. I was very good. Davos of Flea Bottom had run with orphans and beggars, but Davos the smuggler was received by merchants and lords when nobody would catch them. Oddly, the only honest work came from pirates like the notorious, bloodthirsty Salador San, an old friend. All he ever wanted was someone to buy his cargo quickly before the tide left and sell it without telling where I got it. In time, I saved enough to buy a small plot of land and found a woman who was kind enough to overlook my trade. She gave me a son, Mathos. And we dreamt of the traders' circle around the Jade Sea, just one trip and I could settle us and our family for life. Then some Storm Lord revolted against the Iron Throne. Wars are not as good for smugglers as you'd think. Every harbour fills with guards and inspectors, and the seas fill with blockades and pirates paid by each side to prey on the other. Though I had no love for the Mad King, I'd grown up around the power of King's Landing. I figured this Robert Baratheon would end the same as the other rebel lords, burnt to ash. But he didn't. The North, the Riverlands and the Vale joined him. And in the taverns, people drank to Robert's health openly. Brave fools, I thought, but I had a family who'd be left in the cold if I lost my head. When Mace Tyrell marched on Robert's home of Storm's End, I spied the end of the rebellion. The castle was garrisoned by Robert's younger brother Stannis and a small guard, and would not hold out for long. When it fell, Robert would be homeless, and his support would bleed away. This I knew from experience. Months later, Stannis was still holding the castle. Nobody cared. But on voyages, I had seen what famine does, and I thought of all those men in Storm's End who would die unmourned and forgotten. No better than flea-bottom orphans. I told my wife and myself that I'd get a high price for the onions and salt beef. In truth, I knew I'd be captured by the Tyrell galleys or drowned, but I was too stubborn. Later that night, in the dark, in a tiny boat with a black sail, I cursed myself and the moonlight as I waited for the tide to turn. When it did, the wind beat the sail so hard I ripped it down, fearing the Tyrell ships would hear. Luckily, they'd grown lax. With muffled oars alone, I steered my cargo through the treacherous currents and snarls of rock that gave Shipbreaker Bay its name. The waves finally carried me, soaked and near blind from sea water, through the mouth of the cavern beneath the castle. Then, Stannis Baratheon arrived. The siege had left him gaunt, but not weak, never weak. He greeted me and accepted my onions with cool courtesy, betraying no emotion, even as all wept. He doled out the food to his wife and each of his men before he ate himself, a portion no larger than any other. When he finally thanked me, I could see his mind had already returned to the castle's defence. His duty. After Aerys fell and Lord Stark lifted the siege, Stannis summoned me. For my salvation at Storm's End, I was to be granted a knighthood, a keep of my own, and my son taken into Stannis' personal service. Davos of Flea Bottom had become Sir Davos of House Seaworth, and his son would serve the king's own brother. But for my previous crimes as a smuggler, I was to have the fingertips of one hand taken off above the highest joint. Stannis held that I had flouted the laws of the land for years, and a good act does not wash out the bad. In one fell swoop, or 5, Stannis gave my son a future and my family a name that I could never have imagined, nor earned on my own. I still keep the finger bones in a bag around my neck, to remind me what I was and what I owed to Stannis. For during my many years as a smuggler, I visited many ports, taverns and back alleys, and saw many things in this world, but never justice. Until Stannis.
So we can hear from this, we definitely know that that Davos is a character we've followed since near the beginning of the series. He's undisputably at the wall. He's definitely in an upwards trajectory. He started in Flea Bottom, the worst slum in Westeros, and has continued upwards to serve just under one of the contenders for the throne. He's obviously capable and competent. He's commanded troops in the past. He's also someone who can interact with criminals and cutthroats, in the sense that during his smuggling days, those were his main clients. He also cares about Westeros and cares about the people in it, enough to do something at the risk of his own life. The way he met Stannis is proof of this. But is he someone with a plan? Well, I think he is, and I think this small piece of dialogue he had with Jon Snow just before Jon Snow's death demonstrates that.
Who came at your aid? Stannis. Now he needs you.
We don't have enough men to make any difference.
The wildlings will make a difference.
The wildlings will never fight for Stannis. I told him before.
You saved their bloody lives. If they're going to live in the Seven Kingdoms, safe behind our wall, they ought to fight for the damn place.
It's not their fight.
And that's my bold prediction for next season. I think that in the next season, Davos Seaworth will be elected to the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and perhaps go on to be the best commander that the Night's Watch has ever had. Of course, all of this relies on Jon Snow remaining dead, which is, if I was a gambling man, something I would not put my money on. So, let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas about what the future of the Night's Watch will be, and if you like the video, like it, and if you really liked it, why not subscribe?
What?